And we are back. Great Lake State football, episode 30, 3-0, baby. Talking everything football in the beautiful Great Lake State. And I'm Vince.
An episode that is now the same number as you, Vince.
Oh,
30. You old bitch. Just to get my swear word out of the way for the episode. This is Kory. I'm in Minnesota, getting ready to cheer on my Lions. The accents are real out here, just BT dubs.
Are you Wait, are you there until the game?
Yeah, I'm here till Sunday.
Oh, geez.
I'm just moved in.
And I'm Brett, and we got Big Ten football on the horizon. Full Big Ten football.
Big Ten matchups, baby. Some Big Ten matchups. I didn't realize you were staying the entire week in Minnesota and watching that game. So wait, are you there for work and then you just extended it to watch the game, basically?
Yes, Dad.
Maddie's got to be jealous.
She's a little annoyed that I'm not going to be home all week. I asked her to mow. Let's just say it did not go over well. And my response when she said no was, well, I thought you wanted equal rights. And then that just...
You said that to your wife? Does she know how to mow a lawn? Could she ride that zero turn?
Oh, she can ride it.
You don't? Oh.
And I have
we're getting real raunchy here to start the podcast. Whoa. Got Kory with the curse words, Brett with the innuendos. We're rocking and rolling. All right. So before we get too more R-rated here, we're going to go ahead and get into the games from last week, talk about some of the games from around the state, high school, and college, as well as the Lions, and we'll get into the games coming up. Unfortunately, we originally had a guest set up for this episode. Did not work out, but we are very excited that next week we will have Goose Poop will be returning. We had him, we just kind of interviewed him as a kind of origin interview where he came from, what he's about, how he set up Goose Poop. But we're going to have him in probably a couple times between now and the end of the entire football season through the state finals, to just kind of talk about some of the things that he's doing and his thoughts on teams around the state of Michigan. So we're very excited to have him on next week to talk about Michigan high school football at the just over halfway point for the regular season. So we are on week 5 right now. So after this weekend, we'll be over more than halfway into the regular season, which is pretty crazy. I can't believe we're into week 5 of high school football already. Week 4 of college, it's flying by. Football season always goes by fast. Speaking of Goose Poop, the first thing that we want to do here to kind of supplement high school football news is we just kind of want to mention a few things from his newsletter that he talked about from this week. So if you're not subscribed to Goose Poop, definitely make sure you go to his Instagram or Twitter page. He has a link to his website. When you go to his website, you can sign up for his newsletter. And he sends out a recap and preview each week. So he does a recap of the previous week and a preview for the week coming up. So his newsletters are fantastic. If you like Michigan high school football as much as we do, it is a must for a Michigan high school football fan. First thing he mentioned in his newsletter that's noteworthy from last week is fresh off Clarkston upsetting Rochester Adams. West Bloomfield took them down. So Clarkston had pulled off a big upset over the state runner-up, D1 state runner-up last year in Rochester Adams. And then this past week, in week 4, they fell to West Bloomfield by 8 points, 35-27. So very competitive area of the state, obviously. So I feel like any week, any one of those teams could beat each other. It's a very close race in that Oakland conference over there. Another big time matchup was Davison and Saginaw Heritage. Saginaw Heritage was undefeated heading into last week. Saginaw Heritage, I believe, is a Division II school, correct? Yeah, they are D2. They've been highly touted this season as, just crushing teams, 4-0 at a school that hasn't had a ton of tradition recently. And Davison absolutely knocked them back into their place, beat them by 5 scores. That wasn't even a close game. So that was a very interesting game, to say the least. Davison and Lapeer, he also mentioned as an upcoming matchup at the end of the season, is going to be a big time game, week 8. So the final score of that game, though, between Heritage and Davison was 56-20. So not even a close game. Another noteworthy game from last week was Brother Rice upset Warren De La Salle by 1 point, 43-42. Warren De La Salle had one of the longest current winning streaks in the state. They had won 16 straight games. They were the number 1 overall team in the state for a lot of people, not just in Division II. They are now, because they lost, we are down to only 3 defending state champs who haven't lost a game this year. So of the 8 defending state champs, Belleville, Grand Rapids Catholic Central, and Hudson are the only 3 who haven't lost a game as of week 4. Moving on to a couple other things that he mentioned. He does this thing called Survivor Island. We are now down to 74 teams in the state who haven't lost a game. There are some matchups of unbeaten teams, which we're going to highlight in just a moment here this week. So there will be no more than 67 unbeaten teams next week. It's most likely the number will probably be lower, as he always mentions, because you always get upsets as well. A couple other things that he talks about are the most underrated teams in the state right now. And I think this is noteworthy because we've talked about a few of these teams. Jackson Lumen Christi, he has on this list at number 7. They're 1-3. He has Hudsonville on this list. Hudsonville is 0-4, which I was very surprised, but I know they've played a very tough schedule. Number 1 on this list is Detroit Caz Tech, as the most underrated team in the state. They are 1-3 with some very tough losses. They lost to Carmel, Indiana, who was the only team that beat Martin Luther King last year. They lost to Martin Luther King this past week in a very close game. I think it was a 5-point loss, 28.
I watched that game. That game was airing on Bally Sports. It was really
right.
The game was not as close as the final score was. King was pretty much manhandling him the whole entire game, and towards the end, Caz Tech came back. But
they put a couple scores up late.
Yeah, Caz Tech just their athletes look small compared to King. I mean, they're really not that small. They're like high 5 foot, low 6 foot, but King's got some wideouts that are 6'2" and up. And Dante Moore 6'3" himself. But Caz Tech has this guy named Kory Sadler. He goes by CJ Sadler. He's a freshman. He rocks the number 1. So if you're rocking the number 1 as a freshman, you know you can play. But he starts at corner. He plays a little bit of running back, wide receiver, quarterback. The dude is so fast. So that's a name to watch for in the upcoming years. CJ Sadler. I was extremely impressed with how fast he was.
How about the field they played on? God, that looks like a
practice field.
Yeah, it looked terrible.
Whose field? Where do they play?
Caz Tech's field. Whenever someone got tackled, a bunch of dust would just rise up. I mean, it's in a way, it's a crappy field, but it's kind of cool to watch football like that again. Because I mean, we grew up playing on it, and you know how it feels, and like guys are getting bloody and jerseys are dirty. It feels a little bit more like football than turf.
Yep.
Another noteworthy statistic that Goose Poop's been putting out is he's been putting out the average points scored on offense per week. And right now, Belleville leads the state. They are 4-0, and they average 55 points per game. I do not envy anyone who has to face them in the playoffs come postseason time. Belding is number 2 at 53.5. They are 4-0. Number 3, Whitehall, who has been a very much talked about smaller school this season. They're averaging almost 53 points per game. Rounding out the top 5, you have Gladwin at 52.5, and Flint Hamady 4-0, also 50.8 per game. So as you can imagine, all those teams are 4-0. Surprisingly, there's a team averaging over 50 points per game this year who has a loss. Reed City is 3-1, and they're averaging 50 points per game, which is pretty surprising. So I guess I should mention this too. Rounding out the top 10 are Hazlitt and Mason at 49 points per game. Granted, they both played Okemos, so they both scored 70 points on Okemos, which definitely helped them out there. There are currently 2 teams in the state of Michigan, according to Goose Poop, who have not given up a single point this year. Gladwin is 4-0, haven't given up a point. River Rouge is 3-0. They had a bye week and have not given up a single point. So very interesting.
River Rouge has been a powerhouse the last 10 years.
River Rouge has absolutely had quite a bit of success. So Goose Poop usually wraps up his letter with some of his rankings in every division, as well as his big games coming up next week. So we're going to talk about our big games. So obviously, please check out Goose Poop's content on Instagram, Twitter, and go to his website and sign up for his newsletter. He does a great job. And with that, let's get into here our picks from last week. Take a look and see how we did. How did we shape up last week. Sharing my screen for all you psychopaths who watch us on YouTube, all you creeps. Here we go. All right. So last week, our top 5 games. Sorry, just trying to get my screen set here. Our top 5 games from last week. Number 1 here, we had Kaz Tech and MLK. A lot of people probably had this billed as the number 1 game in the state. Obviously, as Brett mentioned, Bally Sports covered it, so they usually cover one of the most high-profile games. Kaz Tech, unfortunately, continues losing. They have fallen to 1-3. MLK won this game in a pretty close one, 28-23. But as Brett just mentioned, he had watched the game, and the final score was a little bit closer than it probably, looked like.
One of the guys that I went to Northwood with, Dontavius Bryant, he coaches at MLK, and there's some real bad blood between those two teams. Like that's like a true rivalry with a little bit of stink about it. So I would
where there's no love lost or whatever.
Yeah, no, they do not like each other, just flat out. I would love to go to that game some year.
That would be a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Sorry, I was tuning out.
Kaz Tech, MLK.
Oh, when I switched to that game last week, the first thing I saw when I switched on the channel because the game had started, it was a personal foul penalty.
I'm sure it gets chippy. I wouldn't be surprised. Those are 2 very competitive teams who have both won a lot of state titles, been to a lot of state titles. We were unanimous in picking MLK. So me, Brett, Kory, as well as Goose Poop all picked MLK for that one. Number 2, we had Williamston versus Mason, Greater Lansing football. This was a big test for both schools to kind of prove themselves. Mason's Division 3, I believe Williamston's D5. If I remember correctly, they're a Division 5 school. Both have been pretty consistently ranked this year in state rankings. Mason won this by a score, 8 points, 37-29. Did not catch any of this game or see any stats from it, so I don't know if it was a close game all the way. I did not see how they pulled it out. We unanimously picked Mason. Brett, Kory, and I, as well as Goose Poop, all had Mason for this one. The next one was Walled Lake Western versus South Lyon East. Walled Lake Western absolutely crushed South Lyon East, 51-23. Unfortunately, we were not unanimous. There was one person who picked South Lyon East. That was Kory.
I don't know who
Kory
the asshole that was, but
so Kory missed that one, unfortunately. Number 4 was Lowell versus Byron Center. This was a 2-score win for Byron Center, and actually Goose Poop had picked Lowell. So this, I guess, according to his model, was an upset. Brett stuck with his wife's employer, stayed faithful to his residency where he lives in the Lowell School District area. Right? Are you Forest Hill Central or Lowell School District?
Forest Hill Central.
Oh, Forest Hill Central. You guys, You're very close to Lowell, though.
Yeah.
So Brett, this Brett missed this one, unfortunately. So Brett dropped that one, and so did Goose Poop. The last one we had was Mount Pleasant versus Traverse City Central. Mount Pleasant, we were unanimous. Brett, Kory, and I, as well as Goose Poop, all picking Traverse City Central. I thought we all had pretty good reasons to pick TCC, and Mount Pleasant prevailed in a very close game, 27-21. I had a heck of a week. That was the only one that I did not get. Goose Poop and Brett dropped 2, and Kory dropped 2. So it is Brett and Goose Poop tied in first at 15-5. I am a close second at 14-6, and Kory is 4th at 13-7.
I'm 2 games off. Don't make it seem like I'm in the dumpster. I'm going to be
dumpster fire.
I'm going to be eating flaming hot wings while complimenting my peers. Like that's not in the playbook.
We still got to figure out what to do for the college one too. We got to come up with a bet for whoever.
I truly think the loser of the college one needs to start an OnlyFans. It's just got.
Are you trying to get me fired?
Yeah.
You can't get fired for having an OnlyFans. You can do anything with an OnlyFans. You could make an OnlyFans.
Local high school teacher and football coach found his OnlyFans today. The school district has put him on administrative leave pending further investigation.
You don't have to creepily play with your belly button. You could do something cool, like watch movies on OnlyFans.
Maybe I'll juggle.
Watch movies. You're good at that.
We'll have to come up with something. Maybe what we'll do is we'll do something similar to the wings one, but a little bit different. An
eating contest is very honest, but
it's fun because something that you can put on, something we can put online for entertainment. All right, Kory, what do you got? What do you got?
A beer mile.
Oh, gross! Isn't that where every lap you have to chug a beer before you finish, before you start the next? Oh God!
Oh gosh!
That's another one where I don't think I could. I don't know if I could put that one online either. That one I would get in trouble for that as a teacher. So we'll talk about it. We'll figure something out. Anyway, you guys have any parting thoughts here on the games that we picked from last week before we take a look at the ones coming up?
Bounce back. Gotta have a bounce back week.
Big win for Mount Pleasant. That's an impressive win. TCC was battle tested.
Absolutely. I commend Mount Pleasant. I think all of us picked TCC, rightfully so. I think it was a game that we expected Traverse City Central to win, coming off a few tough losses to some really good teams. And, Traverse City Central having been battle tested, going to the state championship last year, I kind of expected, I guess I don't want to say more of them, but again, I mean, they have played a hell of a schedule to start the year, losing to Division I, I don't want to say powerhouses, but dominant teams of the Pier and Davison, and beating a St. Joseph team handily that went to the semifinals last year. So that says a lot about Mount Pleasant, man. Mount Pleasant's now 4-0 with a huge win over TCC. So I'll be interested to see how Mount Pleasant finishes the season. I think more people should keep an eye on them. Absolutely. That's probably a big takeaway.
Lowell came back and made it respectable. It was 35-7 at one point in the game.
Was it really? Wow.
Yeah, they came back and made it 48-35.
All right, boys. Do we want to go to this week's picks?
Let's see it. Let's do it.
All right. So for this week, the top 5 games that we are going with, and keep in mind, like we mentioned before, we try to pick games that maybe won't overlap with Goose Poop or the D Zone, some of the other outlets or Michigan high school football pundits who are commonly picking a lot of the big time games. We try to pick some smaller schools and some different games here. So we do have a D7, D8 matchup, a D5, D4 matchup, as well as a D6 matchup, in addition to 2 D1 games. So tried to really mix it up here. So number 1, this is a big time game, boys. Who we got? We have West Bloomfield versus Rochester Adams. Who went first last week? Was that me?
It was Kory. So you go first this week, Vince. We'll go you, me, Kory.
Me, Kory. Okay.
No, you, Vince, Brett, Kory.
I might have zoned out there for a second. West Bloomfield versus Rochester Adams. Oh boy. West Bloomfield. This is a tough one. I feel like this one's a toss-up. You know what I mean? I feel like you could pick either team. I think it's going to be a very good game. Last year, these two teams, Rochester Adams crushed West Bloomfield first game of the year, 35-17. And then they had to meet in the regional championship game, and they beat them again by 1 point. So Adams did have West Bloomfield's number last year. I'm going to go with West Bloomfield. West Bloomfield's 4-0. They just beat a really good Clarkston team. They're going to have a lot of confidence going to this Adams game here. I could see it going either way. I could just as easily see Rochester Adams pulling this out, but I'm going to go with the hot team right now.
I'm going to go West Bloomfield as well. They both have a common opponent in Clarkston, who Adams lost to, and West Bloomfield.
A very quality common opponent, too.
Yeah. The game is being played at Adams, so it's an away game for West Bloomfield. Both teams have scored a lot of points this year. West Bloomfield has scored
157, and Adams has scored
153. So,
right.
I mean, they've scored a similar amount of points. So, I expect it to be fairly high scoring, but I think ultimately West Bloomfield is going to win. They got a little more star power.
Kory's looking for some wiggle room.
I'm going to go West Bloomfield. I can't lose this one.
Oh,
I think Rochester Adams is going to win, but due to the fact that I don't want to eat really hot wings by myself.
All right. The next game here, we have a local area game. This is a Greater Lansing country game in the Greater Lansing area of between 2 small farming towns. But 2 towns that have had a lot of success in high school football. Puam Westphalia, the defending division state champs, and Fowler. Fowler has won several state championships, but it's been a while. Their last state title appearance was in 2011. They had a semifinal appearance in 2019. Fowler won a lot of state titles in the 80s and 90s, was dominant for a long time, and they've continued to be successful, but not at the same success that PW has been recently. I'm going to go with PW. Fowler has not beaten PW in a long time. PW has had their number. I would have to scroll for quite a while here to find the last time that Fowler 2014 didn't have to scroll as long as I thought to. 2014. It's been 8 years since Fowler beat Puam Westphalia. So I'm going to go with PW.
I'm going to go with PW as well. PW with the success of Vince said over Fowler the last few years, and they do once again have a common opponent, Dansville.
Yep.
PW beat them very handily, whereas Fowler won by 6 points. So I'm going to go PW.
In the crosstown cousin showdown, I'm going to take PW.
There's got to be a lot of family. Seriously, I mean, those two towns are very close to each other.
The whole stadium will be related in some way.
It'll be all like Smiths, Treewellers.
That's not
Salem,
as definitely not as they're not as much animosity in this rivalry as the Detroit Caz-Tech King rivalry. This one's a little bit more loving going on.
Yeah.
All right, the next game, we have a very interesting matchup here between a D5 and a D4 team. You got Frankenmuth, who was in the Division 5 semifinals last year, Division 5 state title in 2020, getting beat both years by Grand Rapids Catholic Central. Frankenmuth has a lot to prove. Freeland, Division 4, was in the semifinals last year and got beat by Chelsea by 3 points, who won the state championship last year. This is a tough pick. Both these teams are scoring a lot of points. Both these teams have pretty good defense. Last year, when these two teams play each other, Freeland got absolutely crushed by Frankenmuth. At this point, they do have a common opponent in Alma. This is a tough pick for me, but I think I'm going to go with Freeland. My gut says Frankenmuth, but my heart says Freeland. I feel like Freeland has a lot to prove to a Frankenmuth team that absolutely crushed them last year. And I think it'll be a really good game, whoever comes out on top in this one. But yeah, I'm going to go with Freeland.
Vince, I'm not sure they have a common opponent, but Frankenmuth has not played Alma yet. So made your pick. You're locked in.
I looked at the wrong I must have looked at the wrong thing there. God darn it. What was I looking at then? I don't know. I must have looked at something wrong.
I've learned never to question you.
Yeah, I looked at something wrong. I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go
Frankenmuth though. It's getting close to Christmas time. Bronner's, the spirit is high, getting hot in Frankenmuth. They have a great brewery right downtown, by the way. I have the glass sitting right behind my computer here on my wall. But I'm gonna go Frankenmuth.
I am also gonna go with the chicken town of Frankenmuth. Great fried chicken at Zender's. And I have a college roommate, Matt Compow, who coaches in the Frankenmuth football program. So I'm going to go with Frankenmuth. They've been rolling for years now. 7-8 years. They've been really successful.
Okay. Next game, number 4. Two teams that have also, I feel like this is a common theme between a lot of these teams. Two more teams who have absolutely been blowing people out. D6 matchup, Millington and Standish Sterling. Standish Sterling, 190 points, 34 points against. Millington, 195 points, 47 points against. So these teams have absolutely been rolling. These two do have a common opponent, Hemlock, who they both crushed. So not really much of an indicator of anything. However, Standish Sterling beat a very good Ithaca team. It's Ithaca's only loss right now by 4 points. Whereas Millington, I don't really see a big time win. They beat a Detroit school in Detroit Southeastern. by a touchdown. I'm not really sure how good Detroit Southeastern is. They only have 500 students, so it's not one of the big Detroit public schools. I'm going to go with Standish Sterling here.
Ooh, this is a tough one.
It is.
Good friend of mine from college, Cam Wilson. Shout out to Cam. He's from Millington. But it's really, that win over Ithaca is really sitting in my mind. And the game is home. It's at Standish Sterling. So I think I'm going to go with the Cougars. I think they're the Cougars. They got a paw print. Panthers. The Panthers.
Who just roared? Was that Kory?
Shrimp. It was shrimp.
There's no shrimps in Minnesota. I'd love to have shrimp here, though.
They are the Panthers. You're right, Brett.
I'm also going to go with Standish Sterling. That win over Ithaca is huge. They've also had a very historic football program. So I will go with them.
All right. The big dog game of the week. I guess we had one D1 matchup already, but I think this one might even be a bigger matchup than the West Bloomfield Adams game, in my opinion. We have the OK Red kicking off this week in conference. Well, excuse me. I guess they all kicked off conference play last week, but this might be the first big game of the season for OK Red in terms of big time matchups between an undefeated Caledonia team who went to a regional title game last year and an undefeated Granville game who got beat pretty handily by Rockford in the district title game. Caledonia's D1 this year. I was just talking to these guys before we started recording. So Caledonia is the last team in the D1 assignments by the MHSAA. So they are the smallest Division I team. That's pretty unfortunate for them because they are going to now fall into the same trap all the OK Red teams do, where they all get to beat each other up. And then all of them that make the playoffs will be playing in the same district together. So, another tough one, man. Caledonia's scoring more points right now, but I think Granville's played a few better opponents. I'm going to go with Granville here over Caledonia. Last year, Granville got beat by Caledonia in a pretty close game. Granville's absolutely running people this year. So I'm going to go with Granville.
I'm going to go with Caledonia. The game is being played at Granville, but I don't think that's going to matter. Caledonia has been a really solid team this year. They were picked to win the conference, I believe. Last week, they do have a common opponent in Hudsonville, who Granville beat 40-29, and Caledonia beat 40-14 last week. Caledonia was down 14-0 in that game and rattled off 6 touchdowns to win 40-14. So I'm going with the Scots, Caledonia.
I am also going to go with Caledonia. They've only allowed 28 points this season, where Granville has let up a plethora of points to pretty much every opponent they've played. And they're scoring very similar amount of points between the two teams. So I'm going to go with Caledonia.
Interesting. Kory and Brett against me on 2 picks. So we'll see what happens. I either fall and become the favorite to eat hot wings, or I take the lead, baby. I take the lead. I could take the lead, or I could fall hard. We'll see what happens. So
your diarrhea is going to be spicy if you lose. Just remember that.
All right. We'll see what happens. See if my picks pay off or not this week. So those are our picks and our games for high school football, Michigan high school football this week. Going to be some great games. There's some games that we did not put on here that I think people should pay attention to. We did not even mention the Detroit Catholic Central Brother Rice game. So Brother Rice just upset Warren De La Salle, and they're going to be playing Detroit Catholic Central this week. So that's a pretty big time game that will be played that we're trying to avoid too many D1 teams. Want to try and get some other teams in there. Another big time game, East Kentwood and Rockford, another OK Red matchup. So that will definitely be a big one as well. Grand Rapids Catholic Central apparently has a pretty good matchup at Forest Hills Eastern. Lawton playing Delton Kellogg. Those are some other games that are noteworthy across the state of Michigan. So we had another small time game we talked about too in Beale City versus Everett, who are both undefeated. So a lot of good games happening around the state. So we'll see what happens. Gentlemen, anything else we want to mention high school football before we head into our college teams here?
No, sir.
Nope.
All right. Okay, with that, then we're going to talk about our picks for college football from last week. Some interesting games, to say the least. Unfortunately, my team, the Spartans, did not perform very well. That I think was apparent to everyone who watched that game. Pretty ugly game. We'll talk about that here in just a second.
Couldn't run the ball and couldn't stop the pass.
Couldn't do much of anything right. They had a decent passing attack. Peyton Thorne actually had a pretty good game. So that's the very first one. Let's just mention that one right off the bat here. So we unanimously picked Michigan State. This was our number one game that we picked last week, was Michigan State at Washington. It was going to be a really big time test for MSU to go all the way out to the West Coast Pac-12 game. Did not get it done. The final score actually looked closer than what it was. It was 39-14 at one point, I believe. And MSU scored 14 unanswered, I believe, in the fourth quarter to make it look a little bit more respectable. The next game was Western Michigan versus Pitt. They hosted 25 Pitt. Pittsburgh prevailed. Kory picked Western to pull the upset here. They couldn't quite pull it off. Apparently, it was a pretty close game for a while. It says the final score was 34-13. I thought I saw somewhere that this game was pretty close around halftime, that it wasn't, a 3-score game like the final score says. But third game, we had Northwood versus Saginaw Valley. Saginaw Valley was number 23 in the rankings last week. I believe they moved up one more spot this week to 22. We'll get to our picks for this week in just a moment, but we unanimously picked Saginaw Valley, and they pulled it off 35-14. Our next pick was Wayne State hosted Division III Wisconsin lacrosse. And it was a very close game, but lacrosse went down to Detroit and pulled it off against the D2 Detroit school, 28-21. Keep in mind, Wisconsin lacrosse is ranked number 12 in the nation, Division III. They come out of the same conference as Wisconsin Whitewater. Wisconsin lacrosse, I believe, was the team that pounded Albion first round of the playoffs last year. So they are a playoff team coming off a playoff season a year ago, likely a playoff team again this year. So Wayne State played a very good team, so don't think the D3 thing means anything. Very shocking.
Real quick.
Sorry, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, real quick on that game. Wayne State got completely manhandled. They gave up 443 yards to lacrosse and only gained 285.
Wow.
That was really interesting when I was looking at the stats from that game.
I'm surprised lacrosse didn't score more points. They must have had some turnovers, maybe.
Yeah, there was They had 3 interceptions. Wayne State had caught 3 interceptions from lacrosse.
I was gonna say,
if they had done that, they might have been a 42 or 49 point drubbing.
And one of our followers, I believe his name's, I don't know what his name is. So sorry, unfortunately, we can't give him any love. But he said Wayne State's offense is pretty atrocious.
Oh, I did see that on Twitter. Yep, someone did mention that.
I put 2 and 2 together today that Wayne State's quarterback and Lawrence Tech's quarterback are brothers. And Wayne State's quarterback, Kolka, blanking on his first name. Tyler Kolka is at Lawrence Tech. And at Wayne State, it is Josh Kolka. They're from Chippewa Valley High School, and I was looking at Wayne State's roster. Wayne State has 4 guys on their roster from the same class at Chippewa Valley High School, which I thought was kind of interesting, that 4 guys went to go play college ball together.
That was interesting.
Very interesting. Well, the last game, which I don't know about you guys, but I was pretty surprised by this one. Hope College, who we've picked for a number of weeks now, in terms of just, being in some big time games, played down in Cincinnati at Mount St. Joseph in the Heartland Crossover Conference Challenge between the MIAA and that conference. And Hope, I believe, was one of only 2 schools to lose their game, if I remember correctly. Or were they the only school? I think they were the only one. I think all the other MIAA schools won their games, if I remember correctly. Hope lost 33-28. In fact, at one point, it was a 33-21 game. They scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to make it a 5-point game, and then that was with 10 minutes left and did not score again. Both teams moved the ball really well. St. Joseph had almost 500 yards of offense. Hope had 455. I think we've talked about this. Hope's biggest problem seems to be their defense. I think in all 3 games they've played, their offense has scored over 30 points. This is the exception with only 28, but it seems like the defense has come to bite them in the butt here. Hope had 2 fumbles and interceptions, so they turned the ball over 3 times. So three turnovers is going to hurt you.
And not the other screen?
No, I know. I was just pulling up some of the stats from the game. Okay. So there was not much defense played by either team really in that game, but I don't know what to think about Hope. If you guys want to add any thoughts, but Hope had 2 big time wins, I thought, in their first 2 games against Aurora, who was a playoff team last year, and College, who was an 8-2 team last year. And I thought those were impressive wins. They were both at home. So I don't know if back-to-back home games helped them out a lot. Now they will go on the road, and this Mount St. Joseph team is now 3-0. So I don't know. Maybe they end up being a pretty good team that makes the playoffs. But thoughts?
I think it's tough. I think it's tough, right? I mean, if you play 3 high-caliber teams to start, you're bound to lose one. I mean, it's the percentage game. You're playing, unless you're like elite, like you're a Grand Valley or
Union
but even at the Division I level, like if you play 3 great teams to kick off your season, you're bound to lose a game. So I just think it's a tough schedule, and maybe it'll help Hope win the first MIAA team to win a playoff game, and I don't even know, a century, it seems like.
Trine, we talked about this with I think Pardana. Trine's the only one in the 21st century. None of the Michigan schools have won one.
Exactly. So I just think it's tough, unfortunately. I mean, you got a tough schedule.
The MIAA has another week of non-conference games. There's 7 teams in the league, so they only have 6 conference games. So they have one more week this next week of non-conference games, which we'll talk about one of them in just a second. And then they get into league play. And I don't think it gets any easier from there, man. If you look at the standings right now in the MIAA, they all are undefeated except for Hope and Adrian. And Adrian's one loss was to Heidelberg, who is ranked like number 20 in the nation. So the MIAA,
because they're like the 2 best teams in the MIAA.
Right. The MIAA is going to be very tough this year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if right now Albion, Alma, Kalamazoo, Olivet, and Trine are all 3-0. I wouldn't be surprised if they're all 4-0 next week, because we were just looking before we started recording all the non-conference games that the MIAA plays this week. I think all of the teams but one that they play are either winless or have 1 win. So they're all very winnable games again. So you're going to get probably of the 5 undefeated teams, I would guess almost all of them are going to be 4-0. The only one that's a question mark is the game that we're going to talk about in a moment here with Albion, because they have a tough matchup. But at least I think 4 of those teams, Alma, KZU, Olivet, and Trine, may all be 4-0.
Yep.
So I'm going to be curious. I'm hoping that this fall, when we get into the MIAA games, that I can try and watch some games, because I think it's going to be interesting.
The only other thing I want to talk about is Northwood SBSU for the Axe Bowl. Another butt kicking. I just like.
When was the last time Northwood was the winner in that game?
I want to say my freshman year of college, we won it in 2000. It would have been 2010. I know we won it, and we might have won it in 12. I think. I know 2010 for sure, because we cut down a tree and we got in trouble.
2017.
But that was like the one-off. Like Northwood, we won it, that one time.
Okay, Northwood beat Saginaw Valley 35-21 in 2017. Before that, 2015, 21-14 Northwood. So they've had a few wins they've had 2 wins in the last 6 years. I guess in the last 5 years they hadn't had a win, but before that one, you are correct, Kory. It was 2010, your freshman year. So taking a look at these games from last week, anything else stand out to you guys, or anything else you want to mention before we move on?
Yeah, a couple games really caught my eye. I know we mentioned earlier, but I'm really surprised that Alma won again. They won pretty handily over Anderson. I think Alma's schedule has been a little bit of a cakewalk so far based on teams that they played, but nonetheless, it's so impressive that they are 3-0. Grand Valley absolutely waxed Lincoln, California. I actually hadn't heard of Lincoln, California before I saw that they're on their schedule, but nonetheless, 66-7 in a Division II game is a pretty hefty beating. And the biggest upset of the week, actually, coming out of Eastern Michigan, with Eastern Michigan going on the road at Arizona
we got to
State,
talk about that.
A Pac-12 opponent, and they beat
got Herm Edwards fired.
Yeah, they got Herm Edwards fired, and
on the field.
Arizona State's been a team that's given Michigan State played them in a home and home. And they gave Michigan State some fits when they played them. But it's a really impressive win for Eastern Michigan, and Eastern Michigan just did whatever they wanted to on the ground in that game. They rushed for 305 rushing yards.
Did you see that? I saw something on Twitter that said that's the first time a MAC school has beaten a Pac-12 school in the regular season. That's insane.
Well, you don't know how frequently they play them. The last two times the MAC teams have played the Pac-12, they beat them. Central Michigan beat Washington State last year, and Washington State's off to a hot start this year. And then Eastern Michigan just went and beat Arizona State. Washington beat Kent State though, in week 1 or 2. So I guess they are playing them.
Look up the video on Twitter of Eastern Michigan's coach giving his post-game speech. It's pretty awesome. If you guys haven't seen it yet,
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
But no, those are the ones that caught my eye. Statistics wise, I can walk through who the leaders were quickly. So passing this week, Josh Nichols from KZU College led the way with 347 yards passing and 5 touchdowns with nearly a 70% completion percentage. That's the first time Josh has been on our list. So congrats to Josh. Best rushing performances, like we had just mentioned, Eastern Michigan did what they wanted to on the ground. Samson Evans, running back Eastern Michigan, had 258 yards and 1 touchdown and 7 yards a carry. That's really impressive for a MAC school on the road against Pac-12, especially with the volume of carries that he got. Lou Nichols was back on the list at number 2, and their win over Bucknell.
CMU finally got a win too.
Yeah, CMU finally got a win. It was 7-0 going into half, and they ended up winning 41-0. So that was big. Best wide receiver performances. Novell Chestnut, welcome to the list. 141 yards receiving on 4 receptions. Big play guy, 35 yards a catch for a touchdown. Mark Taco from Albion, he's been on our list before. 129 receiving yards on 6 catches and 2 touchdowns. And Lance Taylor from KZU College was the recipient of Josh Nichols' passes with 126 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Interception leaders, once again, we are tied. This is the 3rd week in a row. We've had 2 guys in the state with 2 interceptions, which is really impressive. Drew Hum from Alma and Elijah Fulkus from Wayne State both had 2 interceptions this week. Team performances, best offensive performances, number 1, Grand Valley, number 2, Michigan. Both those teams played some slouches this week, but nonetheless, they absolutely dominated and did what they wanted to. Followed by number 3, Adrian, number 4, Albion, and number 5, Alma. Top defensive performances this week. We did have 2 shutouts. We had Michigan at number 1, gave up 110 yards to Connecticut. Central Michigan gave up 174 yards and 0 points, followed by Grand Valley State, Alma, and Saginaw Valley State, wrapping up the top defensive performances of the week. So it'll be interesting moving forward as the season progresses. The competition for all these teams is only going to increase, and you get into conference games when the games mean a little bit more because you're playing for the conference to win the conference. So I'm interested to see how these lists evolve. I do plan to do mid-season list of who the leaders are, both team-wise and individually for statistics, put that middle of the year and then also at the end of the year prior to playoffs or bowls or what you have. So, yeah. I think that does it for me with college football last week.
So with that, do we want to get in our games of the week this week?
Yes, Daddy, let's do it.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So thank you, Kory. With that,
hey, that's Siena Heights.
Siena Heights? Wait, what?
Yeah, it's Siena Heights.
What about him? Kory, Brett just got that one. Inside joke. All right. Anyway, we got 5 games of the week here for college, and then we're including the Detroit Lions this week. We'll talk about them in just a moment here. Let's finish up with college before we get to the Lions. Our first one's an NAIA matchup. Siena Heights is facing off against a team that has had a lot of success in NAIA, and that is St. Francis. Excuse me, St. Francis is a team that often, to my knowledge, makes the playoffs and does quite well. So it'll be an interesting matchup to say the least. Siena Heights is currently 1-1, and St. Francis is 2-0. Siena Heights was receiving votes last week and then got beat by a team. I can't remember who was their loss to last week. We had it written down. Roosevelt.
St. X.
I thought it was Roosevelt who's joining the GLIAC.
No, St. Xavier.
Okay, St. Xavier, though, is also very good. St. Xavier was receiving votes as well. So Concordia, Siena Heights has a little bit to prove after coming off a loss here, but an undefeated St. Francis team that usually does quite well. Siena Heights at St. Francis. Who's going first for the college ones?
You, boy.
You are. Same order, baby.
Oh, we're keeping it the same?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Fluid.
Oh, okay. So the first week we try this experiment, I get the
That's what we did last week too.
No, we didn't. We switched it up. I'll go back and replay it. We had a different person. We had a different person start both of them.
I literally went first the first 3 weeks. And then we changed it up on week 4, and now we're in week 5.
All right. Okay.
And look where my record's at. So
something about genetics.
All right. I'm gonna pick St. Francis here. Start us off.
I'm gonna go St. Francis too.
I'm also going to go St. Francis. I think there's no way it's close.
I don't think it's a close game. I don't think this is unfortunately, I would love to pick Siena Heights, but St. Francis is usually pretty dominant in NAIA. I remember playing in the GLIAC. I don't know if you remember this, Kory, but I remember St. Francis playing some of the Ohio schools. I remember some of the GLIAC Ohio schools would schedule them in a non-conference matchup, and usually it was pretty competitive. So they're usually pretty good.
Didn't St. Francis almost close? If I remember right, they were like on the verge of closing as a school, and then everybody revolted, and then they stayed open. I believe. I couldn't just make that up. It could be a rumor now.
I don't know. Couldn't tell you. I don't know a whole lot about them outside of some of the things I've seen with them in terms of football. All right, the next game we have is Albion, who is ranked number 23 in the nation in Division III this week, has to go out to Wisconsin and play at Wisconsin Eau Claire. Wisconsin Eau Claire coming out of the same conference as Whitewater, doesn't usually tend to be one of the better teams in that conference. Usually that's Whitewater and La Crosse and Oshkosh are usually the 3 best teams out of that conference. Granted, Albion has been playing very, very well. They're 3-0. They've put up, I believe, over 50 points in, I think, all 3 of those games, at least 2 of those games. I am going to go with the Scots.
Ooh, old.
I also am gonna stick with the Great Lakes State team and go Albion as well. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about Wisconsin Eau Claire to pick.
Or the Brits. Did I say the Scots? I got to apologize to any Albion listeners. I said the Scots. That's Alma Scott Nation. Stand up. Albion, the Brits.
I'm going to go with Wisconsin Eau Claire, and I just think it's because the Wisconsin Conference has no Division II programs. So you're getting the very similar talent. I almost think a little bit maybe a better talent out in Wisconsin than you are in Michigan. And I just don't think the state of Michigan teams match up with it. Prove me wrong, Albion. Prove me wrong.
It's not a bad pick. But right, like you just said, Wisconsin La Crosse just came to Detroit and beat a respectable GLIAC school. Not one of the best GLIAC schools, but a team that's had success. Middle road, and came into Detroit and beat them in a 1-score game, but nonetheless, pretty impressive win. Third game here, we have Saginaw Valley State at Michigan Tech. Saginaw Valley has been playing very, very well. However, as Kory, he's laughing because he knows exactly what I'm going to say. It is a bitch to go up to Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan. Those two schools, number one advantage is when they get to play at home. Now, I don't know if this is one of the better Michigan Tech teams. Tech did just get beat. Was it last week? They lost to St. Thomas, who is Division I AA. So it's not a bad loss.
They lost to ranked Midwestern State,
who's in Texas,
also ranked.
And they went down to Texas.
Yeah, so it's hard. It's a hard judge.
It's a very hard pick because Tech is battle tested. I don't know if Saginaw Valley has necessarily beat anyone. Was Saginaw Valley though who beat Bowie State?
Yeah, they crushed them.
Number 10, number 9 in the nation.
Yeah,
crushed.
Man, this is a tough pick. I think I'm going to go with Michigan Tech. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with Michigan Tech. It is very hard to go up to the UP and play. Saginaw Valley does not have as much to prove right now. Michigan Tech has a lot to prove, has nothing to lose as well. They're at home, nothing to lose. Saginaw Valley has much more to lose. Tech, I think, will be far more hyped up for this game.
I'm going to go Michigan Tech as well. It's going to be 62 degrees and cloudy in Houghton on Saturday. It's going to be an ugly day for a football game with this chance of a stray shower. I just think Michigan Tech's going to muck it up. And
I bet it's an ugly game and they find a way to win.
Exactly.
I am going to go with SVSU. I think they got too much star power on the roster. They got some transfers. They got a young coach who's a Fair State protege. Yeah, disciple. I'm going to go with SVSU.
Kory's looking to gain some ground on those last two games there. Oh, daddy. All right. Our next game is Big Ten football, baby. Michigan is playing Maryland this week. We could have probably put that one in there as well, but as we talked about a little bit before the podcast, before we started recording, and we went the Michigan State-Minnesota game. Michigan State fell out of the AP rankings, but they are still in the coaches poll at number 21, which I think is more accurate. I think it's ridiculous that they should go from 11 to out when they lost on the road to an undefeated Power 5 school. They're playing Minnesota at home. PJ Fleck will have those boys ready to play. Minnesota's undefeated right now. I don't know if they've necessarily played anyone that good. I'm going to go with the Spartans. I think it's a tough game, but I think at home, I think Tuck has them ready to go after a disappointing loss. I think he makes some changes, personnel changes, and they figure it out against the Gophers.
The Gophers?
The Gophers.
Gophers.
So this is a tough one for me to pick for a couple of reasons.
It is tough.
I think this is the toughest game to pick yet. Minnesota is probably the favorite in the West right now. They're one of the only teams that are unscathed without a loss in the West.
Yeah, Iowa's not playing very well.
Northwestern just lost to an FCS team. Wisconsin lost to Washington State. Illinois has a loss. Purdue has 2 losses. They might actually be. Nebraska's pitiful. I think they might be the only undefeated team left in the West. But nonetheless, they haven't really played anybody either. But they do have a very skilled roster that's got a lot of experience. Their quarterback has been around for a number of years. I think this is his 3rd or 4th year starting. They just got the running back, Mo Ibrahim, who tore his Achilles last year.
Ibrahim Moises. It sounds like that East-West. Ibrahim Moises.
He's probably the best running back in the Big Ten, if not top 2. But yeah, I think the duo of Mo Ibrahim and Tanner Morgan are going to be tough. But the Spartans also have a similar situation where they like to run the ball and throw the ball too. So it's going to be East Lansing. State's coming off a tough loss off the West Coast. I think PJ Fleck finds a way to get the Gophers to come in East Lansing and come out with the W.
I'm going to second Brett on that. So Minnesota's already rushed for 1,000 yards this season, damn near. They're at 967. They're averaging about 242 pass yards per game, and then they're 3-0 beating, like Brett said, kind of chump change, nothing great, but they beat Colorado 49-7. They beat Western Illinois 62-10. And then they beat New Mexico State 38-0. So they got a good defense. They can sling the rock a little bit, good running game. I think Minnesota's too much for Michigan State.
I will say,
game, do you know?
I can look it up.
I will say, be cautious about the teams they're beating. They are combined 0-10. Just a heads up.
Nope, I agree with that. I agree.
The three teams Minnesota beat have not won a game. Now, I'm not saying Akron and Western Michigan are big time wins. Akron and Western Michigan have a combined 2 wins, so they're not necessarily world beaters either. But
the teams Washington State beat are pitiful too. So
you mean
Washington? I made that mistake last week too.
Right.
Washington beat.
No, correct. It's this time of the year though. Yeah, Washington beat pounded Kent State and Portland State. So what does that really mean? I don't know. You're not going to know how good these teams really are until they get into the meat of their conference schedules.
I'm picking off momentum. I think Minnesota has momentum, and I also think that PJ Fleck's a better coach than Mel Tucker.
Minnesota -2.5.
Okay, so yeah, there we go.
I wish that game was out here. I could have gone to 2 games in 1 week. What the hell?
That would have been cool.
Damn scheduling.
All right. With that, is there anything else you guys want to add about college football? Any other games going into this week that we want to mention before we get to the Lions?
Brett hit it on the head. Michigan, Maryland, both undefeated. Maryland has a pretty high-powered offense. It'll be a good game, hopefully.
Yeah, we're really going to find out what Michigan's defense is made of. Michigan's defense hasn't really been challenged this year. They haven't had a sack in 2 weeks, which is kind of concerning, especially because I read today that they blitz 40% of the time and they haven't had a sack. A lot of that is because the teams they're playing are just trying to do quick passes. Like I don't think UConn completed a pass that was in the air for more than like 9 yards or something like that. So he only had 24 yards passing. So I don't want to look too far into it, but the defense was a concern going into this year, and it's still a concern of mine. So prove me wrong, Michigan defense.
How low key was it that Jim Mora was the coach at UConn? That like really threw me for a loop. I was like, holy shit, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Oh yeah, I remember when he got hired last offseason. But yeah, he was at UCLA previously. I can't remember his last stop.
He was with the Falcons.
Yeah, he's been in the NFL a little bit, but yeah, it's a good hire. I mean,
yeah, he's a good name. It just was like, I was like, oh my god, I forgot that guy was alive.
It was funny in the post game interview. He goes, yeah, they're a good team, and kind of went on and on. He goes, I can tell you why they're a good team. I've never lost 59-0 my entire life as a coach. Which is funny.
With 100 yards of offense.
Yeah.
But, how about Central Michigan at Penn State? I feel like we should mention that really quick. They played at Oklahoma State. Now they're playing at Penn State. Do they maybe have, and then playing Southern Alabama, who's picked to win their conference? Do you think they have the toughest non-conference schedule in the MAC?
I don't know what the rest of the MAC has done.
I thought we talked about this going into the season.
Western played Michigan State and Pitt. I would say, yeah, I mean, Pitt and Michigan State are probably pretty close. I'm just going off the bowl game last year.
Right.
And then Penn State, Oklahoma State is probably a toss-up too. I think this could potentially be a trap game for Penn State. Penn State coming off a big win against Auburn. Central kind of putting some things together in the second half last week against a terrible Bucknell team, but nonetheless, they're feeding Lou. I still think that Penn State's going to win by 2 or 3 scores, but I think it could be closer than people expect in the first or second quarter.
A little bit of an emotional lull after a high of a big win.
All right. I am going down to that game, so I'll make sure to send a picture.
Ooh. Brett, you did tell me not to take Penn State last week, and I took them, and they won me some doll hairs.
Well, yeah, there you go. But, I mean, who is going to take a Big Ten team on the road? So, lucky you.
Against an SEC school.
Hey. You do what you do.
All right, sorry. Go ahead, Brett.
No, I was just going to say I'm glad you brought that up. Should be an exciting game. I hope so. I'm driving 7.5 hours to go see it.
A good atmosphere.
Bringing my 1-year-old with me.
Oh boy.
Jesus.
All right. Well, before we get to the last pick here, which we're doing the Lions game for our last pick of the week for college professional games, just want to mention here, Brett is in the lead with college games right now, 12-3. I'm 1 behind at 11-4, and Kory is 2 back at 9-6. But Kory has 2 different picks than I and Brett do in 2 different games, so he could make some moves here. Could tie me up.
I would
see what happens.
I would be a really, really thick woman on the OnlyFans, just saying. So it might work out.
Gross.
I could have a side hustle before we know it.
All right. With that, our last game of the week.
You got to charge by the pound, baby.
Oh, no. I got to get us out of this. Okay, I'm moving on from that talk. Our last game of the week, and it will end us here on the podcast with Detroit Lions. Our beautiful lie downs got a
Lions won a game.
The Lions won a game.
Going all the way.
G-Mac Cash, baby, with our intro song. We appreciate you. Big time win. I mean, the Commanders, I don't think will be that good of a team. Carson Wentz has had a lot of success in the NFL, but Lions played well. I mean, they had a stretch in the second half where their defense wasn't playing as well as they were in the first half. Credit the Commanders for making some adjustments and coming out and executing. But the Lions stuck with the game plan and found a way to win, which usually a game like that in the past, they'd find a way to lose. And that first week loss is looking like a better loss after what the Vikings what the Eagles just did to the Vikings last night, just crushed them. So I think people need to give a little bit more respect to the Lions to their loss to the Eagles, because the Eagles look like they're pretty damn good. I'll kick us off here. I'm going with the Lions. Minnesota did not play very well against the Eagles. I thought the Lions played them a lot tougher. This is a road game at
Short
Minnesota.
Week. Huh? Short week,
Minnesota. But I'm going to keep riding the Lions. They didn't steer me wrong last week. Even week 1, man, they were just a play away from winning week 1. So I'm going to go with the Lions.
I'm going to go with the Lions, too. The Vikings look absolutely terrible Monday Night Football last night. It was a short week for the Vikings. Just a couple of things I want to put in there, too. We retweeted it, but Lions are first in rushing average in the league at 7.2 yards a carry. They're tied for first in touchdown score. They're tied for first in 20-plus yard plays. Tied for second in points scored with 71 points. Third in rushing yards with 372, and fourth in total yards of offense with 811. That is extremely impressive. We knew that we were going to be able to run the ball eventually with all the young stars that we had in our offensive line. My biggest question is Frank Ragnow ever going to play like 2 or 3 games in a row? It seems like that dude is always hurt. Oh,
stop. He got hurt last year for the first time, and he broke his throat.
Hey, being hurt is being hurt. I'm not calling him a pussy. I'm just saying he's hurt all the time. But no, I'm going to go with the Lions. I think they're going to get it done, start out the NFC North with a win, and be 2-1.
Vince just put me in there because he already.
I was just going to see. I wondered if you saw that.
I'm going to go with Minnesota. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. I'm going with the Lions. I think Ben Johnson is doing special things in Detroit. Unfortunately, I think Ben Johnson's also gone after this year if this trend continues for another
God, year. I hope not. I that's what keeps worrying me, man. If the Lions have a ton of success, is everything Campbell built in less than 2 years everyone's going to just leave?
I don't think so. I mean,
you think so, Kory?
He'll be a head coach. He'll get a head coaching gig. He's one of those young offensive guru minds. The guy farts magical.
You didn't get the vibe though from watching Hard Knocks and just some of the things people have been saying about that staff seems to really like mesh. They seem to like work well together. They seem to get along. They seem to be friends. They seem to, I mean, I know Hard Knocks is just a little glimpse, but I just thought there was too much positivity. And even from the guys they cut, that was a big thing when they were cutting those guys had a lot of positive responses to them and some of the things they said about what they were trying to build in Detroit. They respected them. I hope not. I hope you're wrong, but who knows?
I think for $12 million, you would leave.
I don't think he's going to leave after 1 year. No team's going to take a risk on a head coach like that after 1 year. Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator in Kansas City, who's had probably one of the top offenses in the league, can't find a job, and he's African-American. And so with the Rooney Rule, he's just by nature going to get more interviews than a Caucasian coach would. I don't think he's going to leave after this year. Now, in the years after that, I could certainly see it happening. But I mean,
What
he is
about
only
Aaron
36 years old. I mean, the defense hasn't looked
I was to say the
fantastic.
defense hasn't really been.
They've
That's been their
giving up
weakness. I really feel
quite a
like.
bit of yards.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. It's too early to tell. I mean, we're getting the cart ahead of the horse with the Lions right now. They've let us on before.
Just for some Lions chat, since we're already on the topic, you bring in 3 backups on the O-line. One guy coming off the practice squad, Dan Skipper, who's been in the league for a while now, and he's
journeyman for 6 or 7 years.
6'9". He's the tallest guy in the NFL.
But we ran the ball
really?
as well as we did.
Yeah.
We ran the ball as well as we did with no offensive line, which is fantastic. Taylor Decker and Panay are doing really well at tackle, which I've been a Taylor Decker homer since he's been in Detroit. No big deal.
The Commanders had a pretty young defensive line.
They have one of the top half D line.
Yeah.
The one thing that drives me nuts about Ben Johnson, I mean, he's been calling great games for 2 weeks now. I know a lot of people really are high on him right now. Is I think he needs to run the ball more. I don't think he runs the ball enough, dude. Their running game, aren't they averaging like 7 yards a carry or something crazy for their running game? I thought they were averaging something insane in their rushing attack. I don't think he runs it enough. I think they want to get Goff going, and they have weapons at wide receiver. Obviously, they got a lot of talented wide receivers, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had a hell of a game. But
our best receivers have been playing. J-Mo's hurt.
Right. No, I understand.
He's not our best receiver. Amon-Ra's by far.
Amon-Ra's
you don't know that though.
No,
right.
He's one of the best receivers in the NFL right now. You can't call a rookie that's never. But you can't call a rookie that's never played the best wide receiver in the NFL.
He was the best wide receiver in college football last year.
It doesn't matter. Devontae Smith was too when he was in the league, and he wasn't the best receiver in the NFL the first year he came. Now he's trending upwards.
Is he supposed to be back this season, or is he out for the year?
He's going to come back in October, it sounds like.
Okay. But I just think we have a 3-headed snake at tailback with Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, and Craig Reynolds. All 3 of those guys look great this week. They all got reps. They all got great runs. The O-line is tremendous. Even when they had backups in, they were tremendous. I was watching some of the clips on Twitter, people breaking down the blocking technique. Man, it's so clean. Like the gaps are there every running play. I mean, and then you got 3 great backs to hit. I feel like they should run the ball more. I know they want to get Goff in the pass. That's the thing. I get you have a quarterback. You want to really get him a lot of reps, give him more confidence, but
Aiden Hutchinson with 2 sacks or 3 sacks in the first half too.
Set a rookie franchise record.
Charles Harris resurgence. He was a high draft pick back in the day. Brett, I was meaning to text you this weekend. You kind of ruined Hawkinson for me. You put those thoughts in my head, and then he just goes out and diarrhea's down his kneecaps. He dropped like 4 balls, missed a couple over his head. It was just atrocious.
Yeah, he's got 7 catches for 64 yards this year, no touchdowns. Pitiful.
Hey, but he might turn it on. You never know.
Yeah, he was an eighth round draft pick, and this is his 3rd year in the league.
I looked it up though. He's been upper half almost every year.
Yeah, he has been, but that's because the Lions had nothing else, and clearly they don't need him right now. So I guess keep doing what they're doing, but it's just disappointing nonetheless. Probably more disappointing for him in a contract year.
I think that's why he's so frustrated last week.
Yeah, maybe we should get a haircut.
Too much grease on his gloves.
With that, guys, anything else football related? Otherwise, we can wrap this up with a recommendation of the week here.
I got nothing else. Looking forward to it. Should be a fun weekend with us going to different games. We got Vince at a high school game Friday. I'm going to a college game Saturday, and Kory going to NFL game Sunday. So we got the trifecta between the 3 of us.
Well, with that, am I the recommendation, or is it?
Technically,
Kory.
I am, but if you have something in mind, Vince, go ahead, because I have nothing.
You have nothing? Okay. We'll get Kory. I was literally while you guys were finishing up talking there, I was trying to remember who the recommendation was, and I was like, if it's me, I think I can recommend a beer. So
we owe Brett beer still.
Yeah, it's probably spoiled now.
Spoiled? Oh, we buy it and sat it in a fridge somewhere?
I don't know.
Oh, fun fact. This is just a fun fact, not a recommendation of the week. I was at a bar on Friday that you could order a growler of like domestic beer.
Nice.
I almost got a growler of Miller Lite and just gave it to Vince.
Dude.
Tell him
That's like blasphemous.
It's an IPA, but you have to drink it. You have to drink it from the growler.
It was with you, Brett, at the store. You could get a growler of Miller Lite, and that's what Tate and I were talking about.
Why don't you just
Millar.
buy a case of beer?
I was going to tell you it was Millar Light, Vince.
Millar Ale, so you should say. It's Millar Pale Ale.
Millar Pale Ale.
Recommendation of the week, I guess I'll step in here with a beer that I bought on just kind of a whim this weekend. There's a brewery out of Indiana that used to not distribute in Michigan. They just started distributing in Michigan this last year. They've slowly become one of my favorite breweries. Shout out to my buddy Kyle. I don't know if he listens to these podcasts or not, but my roommate from college, Kyle, was the one who first showed me this brewery. Probably like 4 years ago. My brother and my dad have really gotten into them. The brewery is Three Floyds out of, I believe it's Munster, Indiana is the city that they're in. They just started distributing in the last year or so to Michigan. I love several of their beers, but the one I want to recommend that at your local Meijer, you might be able to find, because I found this at Meijer. Meijer carries Three Floyds. When I walked into my local Meijer this last week, they had a fridge entirely dedicated to different brands of Oktoberfest. So it's that time of the year. If you like Oktoberfest, it is September, so people are brewing that up. Three Floyds has a version of Oktoberfest called Munsterfest. Which obviously Munster, Indiana, but also there's a bunch of monsters on the cover. If you look at the box and the label, it has all these monsters fighting in a city. It's pretty cool. Very good Oktoberfest. It was very, very good. So I had that this weekend, bought a 6-pack of it. My father-in-law tried it as well, and it's very good. So if you're looking for a tasty fall beer, if you like Oktoberfest, Three Floyds has a very good one called Munsterfest that I found at Meijer. So if you got a Meijer near you, check it out. No, there's a couple. I only had one. My father, John, you guys know my father-in-law, John, he had, I think, 2 of them over the last couple of days.
In 5 seconds?
Well, he was over more than once, so he had one each time. But yeah,
he drank it in 5 seconds.
He drinks very quickly. You'll like this. I don't know if he listens to these episodes, or I know he does sometimes, but I don't know if he listens all the way to the end. I gave him, so for my birthday last week, Kory and 2 of my other buddies, Jimmy and Zach, bought me a bottle of Angel's Envy. Very good bourbon. And then my mom bought me a bottle of Blanton's, which is very hard to find. My brother was shocked that she found it, and she wouldn't reveal where she got it. Anyway, I insisted that my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, when they were over on Sunday, each try. We did a little taster glass, straight. They're very good whiskeys, very expensive, so we just tried them straight. And he chugged it. It was like maybe not even a half a shot, but I'm like, dude, you're just supposed to sip it. And he downed it. He's like, oh. I'm like, John, it's good whiskey. You just sip it. And he goes, that's pretty good. I'm like, dude, you were just supposed to sip on it. But anyway, I thought that was funny. Great whiskey. If you're looking for whiskeys, those are 2 really good whiskeys.
And this is story time, and now we're just ranting, but I'll never forget when John was down in the basement watching football with us, and he came down with Deb, his wife, and they sit down.
This is at your house.
At my house. He's like, all right, I'll have 1 beer. I shit you not. It has been like 42 seconds. And he goes, all right, well, we got to leave. I'm like, dude, you just got here. Just sat down. And he goes, yep, we got to leave. Deb, come on, we're leaving. So they leave. And I just figured he didn't even drink the beer.
Kory turns to me. So I remember this we were in Kory's basement, his old house. Kory turns to me, very disappointed. They had just left the house. They were all the way upstairs and gone. And Kory goes, dude, I can't believe, he looks at me very disappointed. He's like, dude, I can't believe your father-in-law, Johnny, didn't finish his beer. I go, he finished it. He goes, shut up. I go, it's gone. Go check the can. He had left the can in the basement on the table.
It was less than 2 minutes.
And Kory goes, there's no way. He wasn't even here that long. I go, Kory, I guarantee you, I will bet you $100 he finished it. Kory goes over, picks up the can, turns around, goes just wide-eyed. He was like,
I didn't even see him take a drink. It was crazy. I didn't even see him put it to his lips.
Couldn't believe it. I was like,
nope.
I was like, nope, he's quite the beer drinker. You won't even know it's gone, and all of a sudden it's gone. Well, anyway, with that, we don't want to take up too much more time here with just a little fun story time to end it. Thanks for listening. This is episode 30 of Great Lakes State Football Podcast. If you like what you hear, like what you watch, head over to Twitter, follow us there at GLSF Ball, Instagram, Great Lakes State Football. Give us a follow there. If you like the video episode versions of this podcast, you can find us on YouTube, subscribe, Great Lakes State Football. Give us some thumbs up on the videos. Leave us a comment. We had a couple comments on our last one. Appreciate the feedback on some of the games. So that's pretty cool. So people giving some nice comments about big GLIAC football, commenting about GLIAC football. So that's pretty cool. Audio episodes available on Apple and Spotify. Add us to your library. Give us 5-star review. Leave us a comment over there. I'm Vince, Great Lakes State Football, episode 30, co-hosts Brett and Kory. Until next week, go green and go Chargers.
Go blue.